Well, welcome to this devotional for the fourth Sunday in Lent, March 22nd, 2020. Depending on how you reached this video, you may want to click the link either down there somewhere, or over there, or over there, or up there. There are some additional devotional materials as well as the reading for today that this reflection is based on. I won't be reading today's reading for you. That is John chapter 9, verses 1 through 41. It's another long reading. I invite you to read that first before you watch this video. If you need to press pause right now, please do so and read John 9, 1 through 41. I'll be here when you get back. So when the disciples of Jesus see a man who was born blind, they ask Jesus, "Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" They want to know whose fault this man's condition is. They want to know the reason he was born this way. I guess there is something perversely comforting about having a reason for everything being the way it is. I guess it is a much scarier world if things happen randomly for no reason. I guess it is unsettling to consider the possibility that some people, for no reason at all, end up in better situations, and other people, for no reason at all, end up in worse situations. So if Jesus wanted to end this conversation, he could give in to the disciples' desire for easy answers. He could answer, "You're right. It was the man's parents who sinned. Let's go have lunch." But Jesus is not one to give easy answers. In the Bible translation that I use, Jesus answers this way: "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work." It's a challenging answer from Jesus. It does not clearly solve the question that is on the mind of the disciples. It's a challenging answer to understand. And I mentioned the translation that I read because we're about to get into some nitty-gritty Greek reading here. First, there are some things you should know about our oldest copies of New Testament texts. They are in Greek, and they are in a form of Greek which is all capital letters with no spaces between words, and there is no punctuation. For the most part, this is not a problem. We can use context to figure out where a sentence begins and ends. But every now and then, it presents a problem when we try to translate the Bible into English. The second thing to know is something that I have learned from a pastor who is a professor at Luther Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota. The Reverend Dr. Rolf Jacobson, on his podcast, wants everyone who reads verse 3 to know that in the original Greek manuscripts, Jesus does not say the words, "He was born blind." I checked the Greek myself, and Dr. Jacobson is right. So whatever translation you are reading from, I invite you to look at John 9:3 and compare it to the translation Rolf Jacobson recommends. This is what Dr. Jacobson believes the verse should be translated as. Jesus answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. Period. So that God's work might be revealed in him, we must work the work of him who sent me." That's much closer to what's in the Greek text. So I believe that Rolf Jacobson has a good argument about how verse 3 should read. But why does this matter? What's the difference to you and to me? And why would a seminary professor get so worked up over this one little verse? Well, that perverse need to have a reason for everything is still among us today. It's still so easy to blame someone's troubles on their sins. And Dr. Jacobson shared his personal story along these lines when he was here at Roanoke College just last summer. At the Virginia Synods Power in the Spirit gathering, we heard a story Rolf has also shared on podcasts and in many of his writings. As a teenager, an aggressive form of cancer struck Dr. Jacobson. In fact, he now uses a wheelchair because it became necessary to amputate both of his legs. And while his church was incredibly supportive of him and his family as they faced difficult days, he does speak of one person at church who came up to his mother and asked, "Don't you feel guilty that you didn't feed Rolf better food and now he has cancer?" What is happening in that exchange is an attempt to blame the other person for the bad thing that happened to them. And what is also going on there is a bit of warped self-assurance. A terrible thing won't happen to me because I do good things. So it does matter how we read this text. Will we read it in a way that offers false comfort? And it matters how we translate the answer Jesus gives. Frankly, the version in my Bible is not so great because it says the man was born blind and had been blind all these years, so Jesus could show off the glory of God by healing the man. This is cruel in its own way. And again, it suggests that everything happens for a reason. Elsewhere in Matthew 5:45, Jesus says that God makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. And again in Luke 13:1-5, Jesus speaks of people who died in accidents and in conflict with the Roman governor. And Jesus challenges his audience. Do you think they were worse sinners than others? To be sure, there are times in our Bible that God punishes people who turn against him. But that's not the whole story. That's not how it goes in the whole Bible. When we read the whole Bible, we also encounter the more nuanced message that not everything happens for a reason. Not every bad thing is a punishment. So I like Rolf Jacobson's insistence that we translate John 3:9 more accurately. Neither this man nor his parents sinned, period. In order that God's works might be revealed in him, we must work these works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. I like this reading because it is closer to what I see in the Greek text. It's always a challenge to translate a text accurately into English, but this is closer to what I see there. I also like this reading because it gets us past some of that casual thinking that everything must have a reason, or also that there's always someone to blame for everything. That causal way of thinking is too easy for our complicated world, and the comfort it offers is too shallow and too hurtful for those who have endured pain. As the text goes, neither this man nor his parents sinned, period. In order that God's works might be revealed in him, we must work these works of him who sent me. This presents a more nuanced word from Jesus, and its comfort is a different sort of comfort. Jesus reminds his listeners that good things can be revealed in bad situations. The bad times of this world are often times when God reveals his good work. It does not mean that God caused the problem so that it could be solved later. It means that God brings healing where there is injury. And that's exactly what Jesus does here. He gives sight to the man who was born blind, and the man sees for the first time, and I can't imagine his joy. The man also sees Jesus, and how he sees Jesus changes over the course of just this one chapter. In verse 11, he simply calls him Jesus, but by verse 17, he's decided that Jesus must be a prophet. And then by verse 38, he worships Jesus by the divine title, Son of Man. More and more is revealed to the man who was healed. He sees Jesus in new ways just over the course of this chapter in John's Gospel. His challenging situation at the start of the chapter allows for this encounter with Jesus in which God reveals his work. And it's still that way today. In our own challenging situations, God often reveals his work. I know this from my time in hospital rooms with families going through some of the toughest moments they will ever face. And even with death very much in the room, there is also a spirit of hope and sometimes even celebration when it comes to the promises God makes to us. I also know this from our present situation, right now. So many of you are doing what needs to be done to protect your neighbor, and you are also finding ways to serve them even in this time when we must keep physical distance from one another. And many of you are finding that when you need help, God is giving you help through your neighbor, or your family, or your church, or all the healthcare workers we are blessed to have in our communities. And God is also revealing to us ways that we can keep in spiritual contact with one another and in contact with His Word. This tough time we are facing is revealing some good things among us. That does not mean that God has caused what is happening now, and it does not mean we can find sinners among us who brought this on. No. Instead, we give thanks that the work God does continues to be revealed to us, even in a time such as this. Incidentally, Rolf Jacobson speaks quite openly about how much love he received from his congregation as he and his family went through that particular difficult time. The bad comments to him or his family were largely isolated incidents. The good works that God does through people were revealed through supportive cards, prayers, meals, and rides. His congregation did step up to care for him and his siblings and their parents. If you ever get a chance to hear him share his story, I hope you will take it. It's a little like that advice Mr. Rogers gave to parents for when their children see something scary happening on the news. Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. Challenging, difficult days can reveal people who help, and these days can reveal how God continues to care for us and our world. Jesus Christ is still our healer and our redeemer. He is our good shepherd, and we are his sheep. And like the man in today's story, we don't see him all at once. We don't know everything about who Jesus Christ is. We are all getting to know him better and better. And in our present situation, we are getting to know him in different ways. We're all getting to know Jesus better and better. I take comfort in that when my ignorance is revealed about a certain thing, and I hope you will too. I hope you won't blame yourself for not knowing everything, and I hope you won't look for easy answers when challenges find their way to us. Instead, let us give thanks when God's work is revealed among us, and let us give thanks that even when so much of our society has come to a halt, God never stops his work among us. Amen.